Welcome back to Differentiation of Instruction to Support Standards Implementation. Topic 4, Strategies for Differentiation. I'm going to introduce a few new ways that you may or may not have thought of, ways to differentiate. The objectives for topic 4 are to differentiate between different small group formats and the benefits for various learning goals, different ways to group students, also known as flexible grouping. To connect the concepts of process, product, and content differentiation and how to think about those linked to your learning goals. And finally, how to think about engaging enrichment activities that extend learning beyond the expectations. So I have a question for you. How are you grouping your students? What information are you using to decide how they should be grouped? Are you always grouping them by ability or readiness? Do you group them by interest? By learning profile, like learning preferences, or by behavioral style? Had you even thought about that before? Maybe you were just letting them group randomly, whoever's sitting next to one another. Maybe you've got a defense-oriented seating chart, and you're just trying to keep disruptions to a minimum. Sometimes I want you to think about why you're grouping the students. Do you have a purpose, or is it just to get them to talk to one another? Because there's a lot of other reasons you could be grouping them. I also want you to think, is your default to always mix on-level students with those above and below? There's definitely a time and a reason for that, but it shouldn't always be the default. Many times teachers use that so the above level students can be teaching the on level or below level students. Great if that's your actual goal for the above level student, if they're learning a skill there, but it can backfire if you continue to do that for a long period of time. Do you sometimes make sure that you have a rule follower in each group just to help with classroom management? I get it, that can be a strategy, but it probably shouldn't be your strategy all the time. So I want you to think about how different small group formats can be used to actually differentiate your instruction. So think about the goal of what you want to accomplish for your learning goal. Is the next activity about content acquisition? Is it to teach critical thinking skills? Is it to teach collaboration skills? Is this a reteaching / enrichment activity? Is this just for review? So identifying that first will help you maybe choose activities that target one of these goals, and also help you think about who you want to group together. Some examples for content acquisition, and these are just two, but there are many ways to do this, could be jigsaw groups. This is where you take a group of students, think 4, and each one becomes an expert in a different area of the content. They go work with other students in the same expert area, and then they come back and share together. This is really good because it encourages deep learning. Also, all the students get a chance to be an expert and teach. So that peer teaching skill is for everyone, not just those above level students. Literature circles, when small groups are assigned a book and each member maybe has a role in how they're delivering what they've learned. Someone's summarizing, someone's managing the group, someone's asking the questions. This does promote reading skills, discussion, and analytical abilities. For this one, you might be grouping homogeneous by ability, and they will be learning at the same level. This way you can also assign different books to the different groups if you're teaching a skill, maybe a summarizing skill or identifying theme. The jigsaw group, I like to put heterogeneous, maybe by ability or behavior style. This way you get students with different strengths that can be different experts in the group. Critical thinking. A think, pair, share is a great way to enhance critical thinking. It also promotes communication skills and allows some time for reflection. This can be homogeneous or heterogeneous depending on your goal. When I say heterogeneous, I mean students that are different, whether it's by their behavior profile, their readiness profile, their interest. And the word heterogeneous is when they're different. Homogeneous is when they're the same or similar. If your goal for the lesson is to promote collaboration, project-based or problem-based learning is a great way to accomplish this. Students work in small groups to accomplish a goal. I really like heterogeneous groups here because it will foster some deep discussion with students with different opinions, viewpoints, different ways of gathering information that they can share with each other. If the activity is going to be in reteaching or enrichment, this is typically where people, the default way of making groups, homogeneous by ability or readiness. This is when you're going to use your small group instruction. You've taught, you've assessed, and now small groups where you can target those below, below the target, and those above can use an enrichment activity. If you're going to do a review activity, games are a great way to do this, and heterogeneous groups by interest or learning profile, or homogeneous by interest or learning profile, kind of whatever you feel most comfortable with. And letting students choose their review groups is a great way to introduce some student choice at low stakes for you, low stakes for the student. They're more willing to open up and share if they get to choose their groups in this way. Thinking about all the different ways to group students, how you're going to group them and why you're going to group them, I'm going to direct you to another handout and a small activity called Differentiate Instruction Through Flexible Grouping. This handout is on the syllabus, and it's a way for you to think ahead about why and how you're going to form your groups for your next upcoming lesson. Notice the cow up there, cud. You have to be able to identify what students know, do, and understand before you make your groups, because this is going to determine who's in the group and what type of activity, what your goal is for doing the grouping. So it's critical that you have the KUD broken down. Once I have the KUD broken down, and you can use the one back from topic 1, you'll notice on the second page, it just has a table for you to think about how you're grouping them. What reasoning are you going to use, and then what kind of instructional strategy might you use for them? I'm going to ask you to go ahead and pause the video and give that a try, and come back when you're ready. When you filled out that differentiating instruction through flexible grouping template, you may have started to think, wait a minute, this is starting to look like you're asking me to make a different lesson plan for each student. That is not the case. And then you may be thinking, wait a minute, this starts to look like IEPs or individual learning plans for students who are below level. And that is a misconception that differentiation is only for students with special needs. It's for everyone. You and I do not learn in the same way. Your students do not learn best in the same way. And it's enriching for any one of us to learn in different modalities, different groupings all the time. It helps to round out the skills that we're learning. So make sure you understand that I'm not asking you to write individual lesson plans for each student. And this is not just for those students who need exceptional help or those with special needs. So you might be thinking, wow, this is still overwhelming. That template asked me to come up with 3 different groups and 3 different learning activities. Here's a way to ease into differentiating. It doesn't have to be every lesson, every time, all the different ways. You can start by differentiating content delivery or whole group on different days in different ways. If your default is, lecture, or your default is stations, try mixing that up. Try it different ways on different days, and all the students can get it the same, in the same modality. Once you feel more comfortable with that and you've started to develop different activities for your lessons, you might start to feel more comfortable making 2 options available for students during the same day or during the same time. But ease into it. It's not different lessons, different activities, different materials for every student every day, all the time. Absolutely not. So what are the next steps? Primarily, you have to assess students. You have to, that formative assessment that I spoke about in topic 3, that has to happen. And you have to take that information to decide what and how and why you're going to differentiate. You can assess by interest, learning profile, meaning how they prefer or, learn the quickest, and readiness. Readiness is really the key here. That's the most important step when planning differentiation, is understanding your students' readiness, because you want all of them to be able to reach that learning goal and meet the success criteria. And you may have to figure out different ways for different students to do this. Once you've assessed to determine how you're going to differentiate, your next step is to decide what and how you're going to differentiate. And there are 4 major categories. This comes from Carol Ann Tomlinson. She is a leader in differentiated instruction and has great resources online. And you can categorize them several ways, but we think about them in 4 major categories: environment, process, content, and product. And you are probably already differentiating instruction in one or more of these ways. You just maybe hadn't thought about the categories. So when you differentiate content, it's where all students are learning the same skill or maybe a concept, but they get to use different content in order to demonstrate that skill. Process, this is the difference in the ways students will access the information. They're all going to learn the same content, but they might have access to it in different ways. Product, this might be the one that teachers most readily go to. Maybe in the typical one, you have a choice, you can make a poster or a presentation. Thinking about whatever their output, how they're going to demonstrate that they've acquired the knowledge or the skill. And finally, environment, the physical configuration. I'm going to ask you to pause and think about these 4 categories and jot something down that you already do, maybe different ways you differentiate in any of these categories. See if you already have 2 or more ways that you differentiate in each of these, but you don't have to, just a challenge. So go ahead and pause and give it a try. So what'd you come up with? I bet you already have several ways that you differentiate in these 4 categories, but maybe just hadn't thought about the categories. My next several slides are going to just give you some ideas of how to target the different categories and some examples and templates that you could use. I'm going to start with the one in the bottom right corner first, because I've already touched on that one. And this has to do with the environment. So that last whole section about flexible grouping, that is a way to differentiate student environment. Who they're working with. Are they working alone? Are they working in pairs and triads, in groups of 4, half the class, the other half the class, and then the whole reasoning that goes behind why you're using those small groups. Other ways are just moving where the instruction is taking place. Can you go outside ever for instructional time? Do you have stations? Can you set up stations that students can visit to acquire content? That's just using whatever way you normally deliver it, but let them move around to it. Do you adjust your seating arrangement depending on your instructional goals? So differentiating environment has to do with physical location and who students are interacting with. I want you to think, what is one new learning environment you could incorporate this week? What's an easy one for you? The next category is differentiating process. So I already mentioned stations. This can be one way that teachers already differentiate by setting up different learning stations. But it's ways that students get access and get to internalize the content, the same information. They all have the same learning target. They're all going to get the same, the same content, but some might, watch a video. Some might use graphic organizers. You might have learning centers. Many of you still might be lecturing, and that is absolutely a way that some students like to receive information. Could be learning menus, manipulatives, where you've got all the content in places and they have to sort and categorize. So the process at which they access the content. And just because lecture's not on the list doesn't mean it's not a valid delivery tool. It absolutely is, but it has a place. Next category, differentiating product. This is how the students will demonstrate their acquisition of knowledge or their ability to perform the skill. 3 ways that I really like to use are called a tic-tac-toe board, or just general choice boards, or raft. And I think I have these in reverse order that I'm going to show you some examples of. So I'm going to start with raft. Raft is where you have to identify the content or the skill that you want students to demonstrate and give them a choice, or, assign them roles. Like maybe it's from a different perspective. Have them have a different audience. What format are they going to deliver their knowledge, and what is the topic? You'll notice this one's pretty high level, but they don't have to be. And you can reduce it down to just maybe 2 rows of choice. And students just choose one row or the other. This can be done at kindergarten level, absolutely. If you want to mix it up some, let them choose one from each column, and then they can skip around on the rows. Want to give them more choice? Leave some of them blank and let the students decide what the format is or the role. So this is a great way to differentiate product. That's not the normal way. I also mentioned choice boards. There's lots of ways to do those. And I will show you one in a moment, the tic-tac-toe, but this is one where there are things that everyone must do, and there's some things that you can choose from, and then enrichment activities that you may do. So this is called ketchup, pickle, mustard, mayo. You may have students in small groups. Maybe you have some flexible grouping by ability or readiness, and there may be some that have to do some catch up. So they could work together to catch up. You have a menu of choices of things they can pick, maybe to get the same content just in different formats. Then must do, how are they? Maybe you're going to assign you have to do these things to demonstrate your knowledge. And if you've done those things, you may choose any of the may do or the mayonnaise ones. I really like this one, and great for all ages as well. My other example is the tic-tac-toe choice menu board. And some of you may be familiar with these already. I just want to caution you that they are a little more challenging to make than they appear. You want to be extra cautious that wherever you're going to have a student choose, that the box on the opposite side challenges them in a different way. So you'll notice on this one, I have 4 squares that are one color, the lavender, and then another 4 that are gray. I want to make sure that I'm varying the DOK levels, the depth of knowledge levels, the challenge level of the task that they're going to choose in the 2 areas. So they're not doing 2 of the same thing. So if I put maybe a DOK 1 in box number 2, and maybe the one that everyone has to do, number 5, the one in the middle, might be a DOK 2. I might try to put a DOK 3 in number 8. So I know that the student's getting a whole variety of depth of knowledge levels. I might put a 2 and a 4 across from each other. So just think carefully before just plopping in a variety of activities. It takes some planning. The items that I've mentioned here, the raft, the tic-tac-toe, the ketchup, pickle, mustard, mayonnaise templates. Those are all available to you on the syllabus. And then finally, differentiating content. I left this one to last because this can seem challenging, which is why it's really important that you go through those initial steps of identifying those learning goals, identifying the know, understand, and do, writing those success criteria, because you can't effectively differentiate content unless you already know those things. So differentiating content, you could differentiate simply by modifying the rate of learning. If you've done some initial assessments and you have students at different readiness, you can have on-ramps at different points for students. Some students might need to start at the beginning. Some might be able to start in the middle, that they're already ready and can move forward. By having a variety of resources and materials. So again, if the students are learning a skill, they could use different content to accomplish that skill. And then finally, tiered activities. These are kind of like choice boards, but you are predetermining the different tiers of the DOK or blooms, if you happen to use blooms instead, ahead of time, and then you're going to target them directly. And your unit or your lessons will be in 3 separate tiers with the content. I think that's a little more advanced skill, but you can absolutely do it if you've done the prep work ahead of time. Here's an example of just a starter template. And notice that you can just fill in the topic, your standards. How are you going to pre-assess for readiness? There's definitely going to be some whole group instruction. And then notice that bottom left box, what all students will know and do. That's your CUD. And then the tiers 1, 2, and 3, think of them like blooms. The first 2 levels would be tier 1, the knowledge, and the create would be tier 3. So you could divide those up by blooms. You could also be thinking depth of knowledge. Tier 1 would be DOK 1, tier 2 might be DOK 2 and 3, and tier 3 might be DOK 4. Once you start doing this, you are preparing yourself ahead of time for the challenges you're going to run into after the instruction. So you can do it ahead or you can do it afterwards. I'm going to ask you to briefly pause and see if you can take that original standard that you worked on from topic 1 and topic 2, and I think we did it in topic 3 as well, and see if you can identify what tier 1, 2, and 3 activities might look like with different content for your students. Let's go ahead and pause and come back when you're ready. Who deserves differentiation? Again, there is the misconception that it is only for students with special needs, but it's not. It's for everyone. You can choose. You get to choose if you're going to be a lifeguard coming in every time there's an emergency after instruction has happened, trying to catch students up. Or you can be the coach, where you're meeting each learner's needs ahead of time. You're thinking about those needs ahead of time, and you're starting them wherever they are, instead of letting them fall behind each time and trying to catch them up. It makes teaching so much more fun as well. And rewarding. You will see progress with your students when you figure out how to meet them where they are individually and move them forward. So finally, when I ask this question, who deserves differentiation? Again, the default is for students who are below level, but your students who come to you above level, or your gifted students, they deserve it too. And a lot of times this is called enrichment. There are students who will, start a unit or, a learning cycle with you who can already meet the success criteria before you even start. What should they do? Is it their job to be teaching the other students all the time? No, it is an effective use sometimes if I want to teach them that communication skill, but they also deserve to be challenged and learn at a deeper level. And oftentimes, some of those kids know more than I know they came to me knowing more than I knew sometimes. So I have to think creatively about how to enrich them and still, make sure that they are addressing the standard. And some of the ways that were mentioned in the other differentiation strategies work very well. Project-based learning is a great way to accomplish this. Give students a role and a perspective with that topic or that content and challenge them in a project to solve a problem in that area. Maybe to create simulations or to role play historical or real life scenarios. This can help with understanding complex concepts, and it really develops empathy and perspective taking skills. Cross-curricular units, take whatever they're going to be learning about and tie in other curricular areas, and whatever their product has to include the other curricular areas. Digital storytelling, multimedia projects. There are so many possibilities now to let your students use digital tools and integrate various media forms, text, audio, images, video. This really fosters creativity and the arts. And don't be afraid if you don't know how to use all of the, the digital tools. These students can figure it out, and they might be able to even teach you how to use them. As we wrap up, I would like to direct you back to this differentiation instructional strategy lesson template that you have already put some items in. And now I'd like you to really kind of try to complete it for an upcoming unit. You already know the standards. You did previous work to identify those objectives. You can be thinking ahead of additional objectives for those with special needs, maybe those who already have IEPs or your second language learners. You have unpacked the standards, you've unpacked the goals, you've identified your success criteria. And now that you have a few more tools in your tool belt, start to identify different instructional strategies that you can use to differentiate the instruction, whether it is one new strategy for everybody at once, or if you feel comfortable employing multiple strategies at the same time, that will come later, but give it a try. And then also thinking ahead about your assessment. How are you going to assess not only summative, but definitely that formative? What kind of information do you want to collect, and how do you plan on using it? What are your decision points during your instruction that you're going to need to maybe assess your instruction and pause, make a turn, change what your plans are? So be thinking about those ahead of time. As we wrap up topic 4, the strategies for differentiation, please take those discussion questions in the syllabus to your team and talk about it. How do they use small group instruction? How have you been using it? Do you have some new ideas about how and why you might put students in small groups? How do you and your team differentiate now? What challenges have you faced in differentiating instruction? What are some ways you can slowly transition into to differentiating instruction? The objectives for this topic 4 were to differentiate between different small group formats, to think about process, product, content, and environment differentiation, and to design engaging enrichment activities for students at all levels, but that are still aligned to the standards. Thank you for spending your time with Canyon Professional Development. Our why is to empower, educate, and inspire you, our community, so you are able to take action to fulfill your purpose and serve others. Thank you.